tensions with Mexico are escalating in ways that I've never seen in my lifetime, in ways that I never thought that we would see in any of our lifetimes. Since I was a kid, I've always heard from my teachers and adults in my life that eventually Mexico was going to overtake the population of America. In other words, whites would no longer be the dominant race, the majority race in this country. And it's been, passed on since I was at least in second, third grade. For most of my life, I've heard this. But with all of those statements being made, all of those uh, educated guesses being made about the future of our country, there was never any hate. We weren't in a position where people were outright against the Mexicans because they were Mexican. And we were never in a spot where people were just outright infuriated by the idea that possibly white people may not be the dominant in this country for much longer. But what we were upset about, and something that I've always heard in some way, shape, form, or fashion, is the idea that it's a targeted attack, that they are purposely trying to weed out the white people, that they just genuinely dislike us. For many years, that just seemed like speculation, just something that maybe some fringe minorities on the right were putting out. But it's kind of been proven. Ever since Trump got elected in 2016, there's been this huge anti white movement that has just gained so much power and so much traction and so much relevance. They have seeded all of these little aspects of doubt for white people themselves and for any quote unquote minority group that is seeing us. Even though white people are actually the minority on earth, we can pretend that this is majority white led earth and whatever. But what they have purposely done is they have MK Ultra trained us to have this resentment towards white people, this deep-seated resentment towards white people. And it's been carefully calculated to a boiling point. And this boiling point is happening now. We're starting to hear that the cartel is upset about some of the moves that Trump is making, and they may retaliate. We might end up seeing some kind of kinetic action between the US and the Mexican cartels, or maybe even the Mexican military. And I fear that we're going to end up facing a lot of these attacks in domestic ways. We know that the border's been open for 4 years, and then Trump finally got it closed. But it was 4 years of just hundreds of thousands of people pouring in from all over the world. Some of them were Chinese, some of them were Indian, some of them were Iranian, some of them were Mexican, some of them were Venezuelan. We had people from all over the globe, but none of these people have any fondness towards us, and they have been put here strategically under false hopes so that way they could be radicalized when we finally got them out again. So that way the leftists that have this unwavering compassion for everybody could have this outrage culture created amongst us trying to save our country. And with the deportations, the leftists have been taking over social media, screaming about how we're getting rid of their workers, screaming about how we're being unfair, how people are not getting their due process. And this is creating the cherry on top of the ice cream sundae of this hate-filled stew that they're creating. And what we need to do is acknowledge that this is all part of their MK Ultra. This anti-whiteism, as Mark Dice puts it, is all a part of their plan to finally put us into a martial law. So that way all of their dreams of these 15-minute cities and all of their requirements for medications and all of the gluck that comes with this communist takeover can finally be implemented. So I have a few articles that I want to go over just briefly. I think right now, the reason that these articles are so important and why I want to focus today's video on them is these little seeds of information are how the biggest wars break out. Don't underestimate the power of the written word. All right, so first article, factories are losing immigrant workers, stressing those who remain. Now, this isn't new. A few weeks ago, even on my Facebook and Instagram, I shared a video of a lady who was just outraged about going to a farmer's market and it being basically empty and not having all the people there, and just, upset about us not being able to have these illegals cleaning our houses. We've heard Hunter Biden recently also doing a very similar type of a statement. But the reason I think it's so relevant right now is the last couple days, tensions are escalating between us and Mexico. We're seeing a number of people that are even taking to Twitter and various other platforms, well, I guess X and various other platforms, saying that they're self deporting themselves because they don't want to be here for all this hate that we're putting out. So the article goes to say, excuse me. The article goes to say, Louisville, Kentucky. Jalen Carpenter was stressed. 4 people on her team of 26 at GE Appliances had learned that their immigration status had changed. Under former President Biden, they'd been allowed to stay and work in the U.S. for 2 years, protected by a program set up to help people fleeing humanitarian crises back home. But the Trump administration abruptly canceled the program, revoking their legal status and their authorization to work. Carpenter fielded call after call from her panicked coworkers. They were calling me asking if they were on the run. Does this mean I'm getting deported today? She recalls them asking. Alright, so this is what I mean. They came here under the pretense that they were allowed to be here because Biden was committing treasonous acts against our country. Acts that I really believe that he should be charged for. I am not necessarily for going after former presidents because they do need to have a level of immunity to be able to execute certain actions around the world, and they have to be able to take risks, and they can't be afraid that if they are trying to do some military action that is necessary, that they may face consequences for it, even though they were actually trying to do good. But this program was really just something that was put in place so that way when Trump finally took back over in the executive office, he would have this huge target put onto him, because all of these people who thought that they were doing everything right because they were lied to are now having to face the consequences of what Biden did to them. Article goes on to say, Carpenter says the 4 team members were doing some of the most difficult tasks on the line, installing the hoses on the washers, as well as affixing the platforms that hold the motors. These are the people who are on the critical jobs, she says. Now, the reason that articles are starting to phrase things in this way, that they were doing the hardest jobs on the line, is because, one, it's part of the anti-whiteism. They want you to think that white people are just not capable of doing these jobs. So they want to emphasize the idea that if we don't have these illegal immigrants working for pennies on the dollar, off the record, sending their money out of our country, if we don't have them doing that, then these jobs just can't be done. It's impossible because white people are just so stupid, which is insane. So then the next article that I wanted to briefly cover, which is from a few days ago, back on August 9th. Trump sends military after the cartels, and it's long overdue. Homeland Security reports detail 78 incidents of Mexican authorities violating the border. So Trump is ready to really take this serious. And as somebody who is staunchly against war around the world in almost every instance, this is one of the very few times that you will hear me warmonger. And the reason I say this is because it's a country on our border. I mean, I'm not the one who came up with this idea. I heard it recently. But if we're not willing to fight a war at our border, then why do we even have a military? Because the military is not there to do operations in other countries. So that way they can instill democracy over there and stabilize people over there and fix homelessness over there. The reason that we have a military is to protect us at home. I understand the arguments that we need to be proactive against communism because if it spreads, then we are in danger. But it is spreading, and we are in danger. And this is the time that we actually should unify as Americans for a common cause. And this common cause is terrorists across the border in Mexico that are flooding our streets with drugs, that are poisoning our youth, that are destroying families, that they're trafficking women, they're trafficking children. They are they are doing nothing that is actually good. They are the modern day pirates of the world. It's it's at a point where if we are not willing to fight against this, then we are not willing to fight against anything. If you think that humans deserve to be treated in ways where we're being poisoned because you think that their ancestors weren't ideal, then you are not only a eugenicist, but you are in the same conversational scope as Hitler. So the article goes to say on Friday, August 8th, President Trump ordered the U.S. military into action against Mexican and other Latin American drug cartels, taking an anticipated step after declaring these violent groups to be foreign terrorist organizations less than a month into his second term. I think that was one of the best things that he has done. A lot of us are very disappointed with Trump with the Epstein files and the way that he's really been starting wars when the whole idea is that we were going to end them. Although I will say that the bombing that took place just recently, it was very successful. But overall, I just don't want to see these foreign operations taking place. I don't want to see Trump literally just lie to us and outright think that we're just too stupid to know. Candace Owens has a great opinion on this. I highly recommend you go to her channel if you don't already watch her. But it's just at a point where if we don't do something now, the cartels are going to fully take over the Mexican government, even though I think they already have. It'll be public. And they will start to take over parts of Texas, parts of California, parts of the Southwest, just the whole entire Southwest in general. All right. The article goes on to say, sending the military to our southern border and potentially beyond is a much needed step for national security. Because the problem is worse than most Americans realize, evidence shows that corrupt Mexican military and law enforcement officials are aiding the cartels on U.S. soil. Trump has succeeded in securing the border where former President Joe Biden failed. From May to July, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security released no illegal immigration from the border to the nation's interior. In 2024, over the same 3-month period, Biden released 212,000 illegal aliens into the interior with the simple promise to report to an immigration judge at some point. Most didn't bother to report and simply disappeared. Border security isn't just an immigration problem, it's a national security imperative. 6 years ago, the Texas Public Policy Foundation filed a Freedom of Information Act request with DHS for reports of Mexican military or law enforcement operations on U.S. soil or in U.S. airspace. The DHS responded in July 2025 after the Biden administration suppressed the response for years. We carefully reviewed 190 pages of serious incident reports that detailed Mexican incursions into America over 6 years. Over the 6-year period of 2014 to 2019, covering the last 3 years of the Obama administration and the first 3 years of the Trump administration. The reports detailed 78 separate incidents, of which 39 appeared significant and 39 benign. The latter included police in hot pursuit of suspects, or training aircraft taking off from airports close to the border and briefly straying into U.S. airspace. The remaining 39 incident, uh, excuse me, the remaining 39 reports indicated something more troubling. Mexican authorities purposely violating U.S. territory, likely in corrupt service of the Mexican drug and human trafficking cartels. So that was a lot, but essentially what this is saying is they compared all of these incidents that took place in the last 3 years of Obama's presidency and the first 3 years of Trump's presidency, and about half of the incursions that took place were serious, and they have evidence that it looks like people in the U.S. military, people in the U.S. border are aiding Mexican authorities, that they are working with the drug traffickers, which is, it's not like we didn't know that, but it's different when you hear it somewhat confirmed. So going back to May, violent Mexican drug gangs, high-ranking members sanctioned by Trump. Treasury sanctioned two leaders of Cartel del Noreste. I don't speak Spanish, so I apologize if I said that wrong. Which officials say significant influence, exerts significant influence over the border region. So not only are we now officially classifying these cartels and these drug gangs as terrorists, not only are the leaders of them being targeted with sanctions, but we are officially at a spot where we're prepared to start using military action to stop this. And the Mexicans are really trying to create a countermeasure to this. They're taking to social media in big numbers. They really want to convince people that white people are the devil, and they're using the deportations as their crutch to lean on to convince us that this is the proper way to handle us deporting them. They want to start a war. So please just understand that this is serious. Pay attention to this news as it continues to break. If you like this video, then like the video, comment, subscribe. If you want to support the channel, I don't have a Patreon yet, but I do have a Cash App that you can donate to. Brian D Exclusive. Follow me on any social media platform, also at Brian D Exclusive. And I will see you all in the next one. Peace.